You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Well, welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we get leading Australians, people of interest that can make your life healthier, wealthier and wiser, to join us and share their insights. Today, I'm extremely pleased to have a good friend of mine and really inspiring Australian entrepreneur of German origin, Rolf Weber. I first met him when he was building Brands Exclusive, an online fashion retailer, and then moved on to Marley Spoon as one of their first executives and their CEO. And Marley Spoon's an ASX-listed company that you should look up, has had a great run doing something I think is really innovative and different with a great partner organisation. But without telling you their story, I want to welcome Rolf. How are you?
I'm good, Brad. I'm good. Good to be here. It's been a while.
It has. Mate, I love to ask people their story from the beginning. Where were you born? Brothers and sisters, mum and dad, what were they into? And how did you end up in Australia?
Oh God, long time ago. I'm born in Cologne. Actually, I was born in Cologne, but grew up in a village 50 kilometers off Cologne in Germany. Tiny village, very hardworking people. A lot of open day cut mining in the area where I grew up. So very, very different to what I do now. That's for sure. Very moderate upbringing. Father policeman, mum housewife, and worked in retail. All these kind of things. You could probably say something like the German Bettlers. That will describe them best. And I've got one brother still living where we grew up, and it's been an interesting journey. For whatever reason, I always wanted to kind of explore bigger things or different things. So after my studies, I added other studies in UK and then moved to Hamburg. And somehow, backpacking days, I fell in love with Australia. I didn't quite make the move after my backpacking time, and then had the opportunity together with my partner to come here for a few months in 2002. We really liked it here, applied for permanent residency, and then in 2003 made the permanent move to Australia. Albeit, we always said, let's give it a go. And we're 19 years here or so nearly 20 years later, we're still giving it a good go.
Fantastic. Now, how did you come in terms of your career to end up in this sort of technology and online space? It's
been a winding journey from management consultant at PwC, worked at IKEA, helping building the Homebush-based store back in the days, small business management consultant. And but how do I get to it? I think you said it. Really, it depends on the people you kind of spend time with. And, I spent time with Daniel Jarosz, really, really good friend of mine who I met living here in Manly. And together we started hatching ideas of becoming entrepreneurs on our own selves. And it took a little while, but, he spent time with eBay in Germany, and together then we got really interested in startups, digital startups, and working on 3 different ideas. We found that together with Brands Exclusive, our skills would really match well. I'm more in the operational side than on the digital marketing side. And we joined forces to kind of come together and build the Brands Exclusive startup in end of 2008, early 2009.
Fantastic. So you come up with the idea. Tell us about, what Brands Exclusive was at the idea stage, and then, what it turned out to be, as is always so different in the execution stage.
Yeah, so 2008-09, there's this crazy world of online shopping clubs going on. And we did it, and through Dan's connections in Europe, we were able to source the technology platform and basically bring that technology platform and that business model to Australia. So the idea was online shopping club. What does that mean? On one hand, you have suppliers, especially 2008-09. I think it was called GFC at the time. There's a lot of fashion wholesalers sitting on a lot of stock because it didn't move that well. And so you have supply on one hand, and you have customers looking for a great deal on the other end. And we were the part in between. So we took pictures of the products that were sitting in our suppliers' warehouses, And we created these short-term 3 days, 4 days sales campaigns with incredible prices, 50, 60, up to 90% off. And then customers only had 3 or 4 days to place their orders. And then we received the goods, we cross-docked them and shipped them to the customer. And it was incredibly attractive. On one hand, suppliers could offload their goods outside normal retail channels. And on the other hand, incredibly low prices for our consumers. So we built up a reasonably large customer base very quickly. So we built that business up to, I think it was 55 million revenue run rate turnover in just 3 years. So it was good fun. And then we expanded from fashion into homewares, beauty products, and I believe you also sold a little bit of liquor on the way.
So when you look back now, what were the biggest challenges? And I know there are a few, but what were the biggest challenges in executing? So
the biggest challenges, it always starts with the customer, and the advantages of the business model. We didn't hold a lot of inventory. We actually only held return inventory, which we resold. So we built a reasonably big business, very capital efficient. On one hand, we paid our suppliers within 30 days, but we got the money kind of a week, 2 weeks early from our customers. So quite helpful. But it's been a business that was going against the trend with regards to customer expectations. So because we didn't hold the inventory, we couldn't do 1 day shipping, 3-hour shipping. It was quite the opposite. It was, best case a week, worst case 5 weeks from payment to actually receiving the goods. Sometimes even worse, suppliers held their stock in their own warehouses thinking it was there, and then it wasn't when we placed the order. And so we had to, 4 weeks.
Oh, wait, this is 08, 09, 2010, right?
2010, 11.
Yeah.
So, and then,
like it sounds funny now, but that was, in those days, that was
where we started. You couldn't buy a shoe online in Australia, right? And that's where all the money went overseas, and we had the Jerry Harveys and everybody else complaining about GST and all these kind of things going on at the time. Like there wasn't much of a startup industry, very, very different to the startup ecosystem that we have now, which, together with Daniel and a bunch of others, I'm quite happy to have played a minor part in building. So, the downside of the model was the galloping customer expectations with Iconic coming on board and then starting to offer 3 days delivery on their own overstocks, 50% off. So it's got a bit harder to compete. So we would have had to significantly change the business model into inventory holding and other things to keep up. And with fast-moving consumer taste, highly risky building up stocks, especially when you're not buying the freshest, newest, and so forth. So
you then sold the business, stayed in for a short amount of time. But I think that's an interesting one in terms of, obviously, lessons from selling the business and then lessons in working, as effectively a subsidiary of a much larger company. What would you say to, people considering those parts?
Yeah, so the idea of selling to APN at the time, like we built a very large database of customers, and obviously in the advertising business, so it was all about audiences, and that made sense. But what happened afterwards is that, significant shareholders didn't like the deal. Deal got torpedoed. Then CEO resigned. So like all the premises and promises around the deal kind of disappeared very quickly after the deal. And then it was a harrowing one and a bit years with regards to dealing with a board that didn't understand online, and then new CEO coming in, and no hard feelings, but complete shift in strategy, and therefore Brands Exclusive didn't have a role in that business. So that was sold to Aussie Commerce at the time, and that was the point where we exited.
Now you got out of the deal, in front, which is helpful. You don't have any grey hair, so that's always a good thing. But,
I come closer to the camera.
Mood lighting. And you then come out of that experience. And then what was the journey to sort of Marley Spoon?
The last couple of months, it was a three-way negotiation that was very tiring. On one hand, we still had a business to run. On the other hand, having to manage that sale event. So that was very tiring for myself, and then subsequently for the family. I was a grumpy old fart at home, and I kind of decided needed a break, need to give some time back to the family. So we actually spent the winter in New Zealand for 3 months. So we moved 3 months to Queenstown, and just relaxed and went skiing. The kids were 6 and 3 at the time, so that was good. Recharged. In the meantime, together with Justus and Jan and Brian, we hatched the idea of doing a little sidekick startup. So we launched we launched the idea of launching MedPause, and then by the end of the year, we launched MedPause, which recently listed. So that's a great little story in itself. So that was a little side project keeping me sane and busy. But with Brands Exclusive, we had basically Lakestar, which is a European VC, Klaus Hommels, invested in Brands Exclusive, and they exited when we sold the business to APN, and they were reasonably happy with their returns. And in 2014, they invested in Marley Spoon in Germany in the head office. And, when the idea was, we should be going to Australia, Klaus said, I know a guy or two. Let's ask them if they want to be involved or help in any way. And the initial idea was I would support Marley Spoon in Australia to build a team, and then I would kind of phase off and do something else. But I really liked what we were doing there, and I failed in kind of finding a replacement for myself. So my biggest failure and success maybe was that I didn't make myself redundant. And that was it. So end of 14 got put into contact, looked at it, pondered some time if I wanted to go back into a physical warehouse, highly operational business, even more complex, perishable, refrigerated than with Brands Exclusive, and decided it could be good fun. And then, by April, I had the early startup team in April 15, and then June 15 shipped the first box out of a tiny little warehouse in Alexandria. So a lot has changed since.
So you look back now, what is the volume of meals you're now shipping? And for listeners, can you explain the product, I guess, simply, Rolf, and give us an idea of now what the volumes are that you're shipping?
Yeah. So with Marley Spoon, what we want to bring market fresh, delightful, and easy cooking back to the people. So we do that by preparing all the ingredients in a ready-to-cook format. We offer, across our two brands, Marley Spoon and Dinnerly, we offer 60 to 70 different meal options per week. And customers can simply choose 3 or 4 meals that they want to cook at home. We deliver once a week, and then within 30 minutes or so, you have a delicious, nutritious, healthy meal put together without all the stress. What am I going to cook next week? Where do I get the ingredients from? And do I really want to buy a liter of hoisin sauce when I only need 20 mils or whatever? So really making cooking easy, because ultimately people do not cook because it's so bloody hard. And the hardest thing is choosing.
Gathering.
And the gathering is one thing, but the choosing, spag bowl again? No, not really. Can't stand it anymore. So that's kind of the promise of the business. But what that means is significant kind of change in your habits. Normally kind of sit down on a Sunday, spend some time, go to the shops, do your big weekly shop, and then you kind of do the top ups in between. And so that's part one. And the other one is trust. Do I trust Marley Spoon to pick kind of the best ingredients for you? when you go in a supermarket, you stand in front of the Apple box and you touch about 20 to pick two, right? So that's kind of the other hurdle there for customers to make that switch. But again, we're now 6 years here in Australia along the way, and a lot has happened, not least the kind of pandemic. And the shift from offline or grocery shopping to online, that was kind of 3%-ish happened last year. And now we're probably moved to 6-7%. And we believe that shift will continue to reach normal levels within other categories, be it fashion or even travel. So very, very early on. We're now. And
what are the volumes now?
Volumes, kind of we're 200-ish million run rate here in Australia, and we're 500 million-ish run rate on a global scale.
Do you mean revenue?
Revenue, yeah, Australian dollars revenue, yeah.
How many meals is that?
We ship millions of meals. So roughly a meal is $11.
Yeah.
It's millions. Yeah.
So that's the interesting bit. In a service business, we don't have the complexity of finding all the bits and pieces, putting them together, making sure they stay fresh, clean, and putting them.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's simple. It's simple on the surface. You know, you place an order, supplier ships it to your warehouse and you cross-stock it. But with perishable and fresh regulated items, we always speak with our team members that a piece of chicken is a deadly weapon, right? If not treated correctly, in order to really highlight the care that needs to go into, on one hand, obviously adhering to food regulations and standards, but on the other hand, there is just behaviors, there's expectations, there is, our team members in our pick and pack facilities. They're the last ones with Marley Spoon to get into contact with a product. So really work with our team members there to ensure that they understand in feeding the nation, if you like, and really also within the business, ensure that, these are really important people in our business. We spend a lot of time and care in training, recruiting, looking after them and so forth.
So now that you bring that business to an IPO, for our listeners, what do you think the lessons are for you from that process? So
we're a German company. I run the Australian business, and we listed the German holding business on the ASX, and the Australian business is 100% subsidiary. The interesting part of that journey has been kind of from a VC startup, VC funded startup mentality, where you really are focused on growth to a ASX board supervised listed business. It's a very, very different mentality. How you operate, how you report, what do you need to consider when you make decisions? Is this something that you need to announce, not announce, and so forth? And we're still very, very agile in decision making, in board communication and so forth. So that's not necessarily the question, or challenge. But the challenge is that you want to make a decision. You want to switch from fast growth and maybe not profitable to kind of, a break-even, less growth approach. And then you have to consider, well, what did we promise the market? Can we do that? If we change it, what are the implications? So these topics you don't have to deal with in a more private environment. And, if the market changes, and there's an opportunity to do things differently, you just have to consider what you said last week, even though that wasn't, that doesn't apply anymore. And as you have it with investors, they like certainty. And we're still in a business where a lot of things are uncertain, and there's tons of opportunity where you'd want to move faster. But all in all, it's been also, it is a good experience because it brings rigor. Brings longer term strategic thinking as well. maybe a bit more consideration. And there is also a lot to be said to being listed.
Yeah, and you guys have done well. Your shareholders have, I think, prospered. But in the business itself, in terms of your underlying senior execs and team members, do you think the process of not just winning internally, but them feeling that their investors and supporters, I guess, have really validated that, has that helped the team in terms of moving the business forward?
It's been an interesting time. So our share price movement was, first it was down before it was up, and it went down to like significant lows, and that was when the global business, where we're turning over at the time maybe 150 million in Australia, 120, whatever, and the global business is worth 60. Then you start questioning who's the fool here. Is it us, or is it Mr. Market? And
to give you and just to interrupt there, Rolf, to give people a context, the business is listed at $1-ish, $1.20, $1.40. It's low in March 2020. It's 24.5 cents. It's trading today at $2.70. So the market cap low is 60 million. The market cap high is 700 plus million. Yeah, run that one by me. You've got to stay calm amidst the proclivities of Mr. Market to be quite moody.
Yeah, and it still is moody. I mean, we have significant swings on a daily basis without any basis. Like I don't understand it, and that's all fine. I think ultimately, we believed in what we were doing, and I bring it back to bringing Market Fresh, Delightful, and Easy Cooking back to the people. And we get a lot of validation when we get it right. We get it wrong a lot of times, but when we get it right, like yesterday, actually, we ran a little competition. Tell us why you like Dinnerly, our value brand, and customers sending us poets. We have customers. 80, 90-year-old man that use Marley spoon because their wife has fallen ill, and they can help out and they can cook stuff. Like there's heartbreaking stories. There's stories about mothers where their teenage kids start cooking for the first time. There is autistic children because it's a rigorous, it's a 6-step recipe, and there's tons of these positive stories that we just elevate within the business to say, well, the market thinks what it thinks, and there's things we can do to help the market understand, but that takes time. And we're thinking in longer term horizons than kind of a week, a month, a year. But what's really important is this, right? It's what the customer thinks of what we do. And these are obviously the positive stories. And then we also look at all the feedback where we can improve. And then we focus on what we need to do in order to make that customer experience significantly better than, what it was, last week, last year, and so forth. So that's the work we're doing with regards to focusing our internal energy on the stuff that matters and move it a little bit away on the stuff that doesn't matter, which is the daily fluctuations of the share price, right? And, then still, if you don't believe, but the key idea is that you just bring some comparables in and say, well, you have 100-year-old supermarkets that grow 5% year on year, and they're valued like this, right? And you have other e-commerce businesses that, grow, 20, 30% a year, and they're valued like this. So eventually, logic dictates that, that should be probably more appropriate benchmarks than whatever was applied at the time.
And you land, if you believe that Mr. Market's moody in the short term, but in the long term, we'll work it out. I think your comments about being very much focused on the customer and listening to those customer stories and doing the work that builds out, something that makes a material impact and difference to those customers really is what all businesses are about. On the personal side, how do you juggle, the demands of being a CEO? I love this one. Everyone always laughs at this one. It's like, yep. And 2 children and a gorgeous wife. How are you structuring your days, your weeks, your holidays to try and stay sane in an insane world?
I like, in order to have time off or time to think, it's key to build your team around you. And my role over the last 6 years has changed fundamentally, and keeps changing, and that's what keeps me engaged. So from the early startup days, where it's really about rolling up your sleeves and getting into the weeds of everything, because there was none other, to now where, we work in Australia with a full-blown team across finance, marketing, operations, and quality, safety, health and safety. So I have a strong team around me where I don't have to kind of worry about the day to day, because I'm extremely confident in the team members that take care of these things. And that frees up a lot of time. So I do work, what others consider crazy hours, but I don't think I work crazy hours anymore. And then it's about finding that time off. Over the last year, I changed how I operate. So I've been doing 4 to 5 times a week, at least 45 minutes exercise. Previously, that wasn't the case. I lost a bit of weight, drink less alcohol. So there's a few changes I made in order to keep my body and subsequently my mind in shape. And I'm working a couple of days a week from home now, more consistently. So that helps with spending time with the kids and being home. This 2-hour commute doesn't happen, and that energy, that time flows into looking after myself. Short-term holidays, kind of, weekends away. These are really cool things. And then, when time permits, and the pandemic permits, hopefully we get a couple of holidays back in Germany with the family. Meet both our families over there. Go some skiing in Italy or whatever.
And then sanity will be restored once you can ski on appropriately sized mountains. What?
Even here, I mean, for a weekend away, it's still good fun. So we didn't go last year, but this year it's already planned.
Yeah, perfect. So when you look out now, like are you a person that believes sort of looking out 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to say, okay, this is a sort of vision for your life, family life, or how do you think about the long term?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So with Marley Spoon here in Australia, there's a lot to do, and normally I'm a guy who after 4 years gets a bit bored when things get a bit more steady state. You move from 200% growth into 5% growth year on year. I get bored. Like I'm not the guy to fiddle on the edges and improve things by 0.1%. That's not me. I thrive, or I work well when things are unclear, uncertain, and there is kind of big stuff to be done and changed. With Marley Spoon, I'm 6 years in, and there's still so much to do. And for me personally, also my role will change. I moved from a one brand startup person to now we have 2 brands. We're looking to potentially expand that more. My role is not nitty gritty, more strategic, long-term focus. So that's good fun. Long-term, so the next few years, I'm committed to keep building Marley Spoon. I've done kind of the 0 to 100 million-ish kind of level startup 2 times in a row. I now want to do kind of the 100 to a billion as a challenge I haven't done before. So
it's a nice way to think about it. To sort of think about it as a new startup at its next phase of development.
Yeah. So I think about Marley Spoon for me is a different business now than it was in the first couple of years. So And that means I do a completely different job, not only here in Australia, but together with a global executive team with regards to my input into the global Marley Spoon business. So that's the good fun bit. In the next few years, I'm focused on doing that, and really this is about learning, doing things differently, and for me, but also for the business. And after that, to be honest, I'm not yet clear, because I am focused probably a bit more on the next couple of years. However, what I do think is important, that whatever I do builds the foundation for whatever comes next, and that's kind of a bit of a past learning. Whatever I did at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the beginning, I still kind of use somewhat from. When I worked at IKEA, I learned to have a lot of logistics and vertically integrated, retail business models. And these learnings are still kind of relevant to what I did at Brands Exclusive, but also relevant to what I did now. What I learned at Brands Exclusive in scaling a physical operation super fast was very handy, building Marley Spoon. And I believe whatever I do now will be super, super interesting and skills that, I'll take with me for whatever comes next. So, operating within a business on global scale, being part of a stock listed, ASX listed business, these are learnings that kind of build the foundations for whatever comes next.
Yeah, so it is almost the most common trait amongst people that I see really doing things is their interest in learning and their commitment to learning and their understanding that everything they do today sort of has a compounding effect and sort of contributes to tomorrow. So I think it's a real insight. Now with the business now, if somebody said to you, what are you most proud of now, and what do you want to be most proud of next, if you like? What is that thing? Is it the 6-step process? Is it the idea that you bought something from overseas that was working and executed it here? Is it the quality of your team or the difference that the business has made to your suppliers? What's the thing that really most gets you up in the morning, gets you excited about what you're doing?
All of it. Building an incredible team, being, with our initial team, being part of creating job opportunities in Australia. We employed in all shapes and forms, casual, full-time, and so forth, some 500 to 600 people. So, that's a significant contribution somebody can make into a society. And we have a lot of team members that start really literally on the shop floor, immigrants or non-immigrants, and they're now running managerial positions in our facilities, second in charge, and so forth. So there's some great stories of people grabbing the opportunity by the horn and then really backing themselves, putting the work in, and then creating a career that wasn't there before. So these are great stories that make me proud, and we've had that in Brands Exclusive. We have that with Marley Spoon. But when I looked at, you have the Maslow pyramid and kind of, the basic needs for the family, kind of, got the house, got the income, we got the power, electricity, and the food, or, so moving up. And so I looked at it actually with my son the other day, and it's like, I'm now across all 5 or 6 levels in that pyramid active, and that's really interesting. So I want to focus a bit more on how we can influence a few things. So we're still a tiny little business here in Australia in the scheme of things, with Coles and so forth. But because we know so much about our customers and their eating habits, well, we're not preachy or fundamental in how you should be eating. We still have an ability to influence what you're eating and what goes into your body. So there is a bit of an opportunity to support Australians eating better and driving health at scale. So at the moment, we're a tiny scale, but as we grow, and instead of feeding 100,000, feed maybe 500,000 or 1 million people in Australia, then we have an opportunity to shape health and to drive health.
And to shape the supply chain in terms of the quality of the inputs that go to people.
Because we have more and more data, we know what our customers like and don't like and so forth. So we use that data already in order to predict what they're going to eat. We use that data to make pre-selections with regards to the menu that we have, and then say, well, out of these 40 meals that we have live, we think these 3 are the ones you'd really want. Now, so that's part one. But with that, we can actually then take all that information back into the supply chain. And then ideally, I want to be in a position where I can predict 12 months in advance what you're going to eat. Now, when I know that, I know when to plant the potato, right? So the idea is that at this point, we have 1% waste in our own operations, and that is in a highly perishable food. It's unheard of to have that little waste. We reduce food waste in our customers' fridges because we only ship them as much as they need. And there is no broccoli going to waste. There's no tomato rotting away. So with the information of what our customers are going to eat in the future, and we're narrowing down the variance and pushing that all the way up the supply chain, will also have a tremendous opportunity to reduce waste in the supply chain in front of us. And then we can actually tackle a major, major problem. Food production takes up 80% of water. It's a travesty, energy and water going to waste. So, that has an impact on, carbon and so, that's a significant role we can play as well. So food waste reduction, impact on better, healthier living. And then there's a societal impact when people cook more often as family units. It's proven in some studies, I can't quote it now, but the more time families spend together, the less issues happen, in those family units. So there's a lot of kind of more altruistic touch points that, I'm now that, the bottom levels of that pyramid are covered, I'm more interested in.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. Well, for all of our listeners, I hope you've really enjoyed our story today with Rolf. Now, I'd encourage you to go to Marley Spoon and you'll see their website at marleyspoon.com.au. So MARLEY spoon.com.au, and go and order yourself some fresh food, spend some time cooking. It's funny that we've had Rolf today because I've been cooking a bit lately and I've really been enjoying it quite often. It's a shock. It shocked me, really shocked me, Rolf. And I think the pandemic's created new work habits, a little bit more time, which is really interesting. So I really want to recommend marleyspoon.com.au to all of our listeners. I want to thank Rolf for really his great story and inspiration today and making the time to share it with us. And as I love to say, Rolf, have a great day.
Thanks, Brett. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you again in person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been like we've been locked up for the last year. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.